Hello, freedom seekers. I'm just kind of laughing because, right before I come online here, there's this little message that popped up on my screen. It says, "You are alive." And it's like, yeah, I'm not dead, so I guess I would be alive. I just sometimes just my sense of humor, and I just kind of get a kick out of things. And just part of my simple concept of life, I truly enjoy the simple things in life, and gosh, to enjoy the simple things in life, it just seems that that's what increases this level of satisfaction and pleasure I have. And that's really what we're going to be talking about here tonight. Of course, I'll be doing my weekly review and update and talking about, how my transition with my income and business stuff is going, and how it is just like the transitions that you're going through. And those transitions would be maybe from moving from monogamy to non-monogamy, uh, or maybe to from going from, if you're already living an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life, maybe to transition to a life that is more liberating. And I just over the years, I know myself when about the first, I don't know, 8 years or so of living my ethical and consensual non-monogamous life, that there's a lot of rules involved, and a lot. It wasn't as liberated as it is today. And so it's one of the things that I've learned in my journey is to focus on the liberation that we have and experience, because otherwise, oftentimes we can switch from monogamy to non-monogamy, or whatever goes on in your life, and find out that yes, you're enjoying your life a little more, but it's incremental. It's not really liberating. And because it's like with my situation myself, at the age of 49, my wife and I opened our marriage, and sure, at that point, then I started to really enjoy my sex life for the first time ever. I had only ever had sex with one person in my whole life up to that point, and that was the woman who became my wife, and we were virgins when we got married. And but when we opened our marriage, yes, we both started to enjoy ourselves a lot more. But there's a difference between how much you increase your satisfaction and pleasure in your life, um, and when you do that incrementally. And what I learned in my journey is that it's really, if you can learn and learn how to liberate your life, that gives you the life that you love the most. Not just a life that you enjoy and have a good time with, but the life that you love the most. And I'm going to be talking about that here tonight. That's the focus, and how, because I used to live a life like most people, just going from one problem to the next and solving problems. And that's how I then created my life. And I've learned a lot since then, and I want to share a lot of those things with you. I see that I usually take about the first 5 minutes and just chat a little bit, and wait for people to come on and join us. And I see we have some people here joining us. And so why don't you go ahead and tell me where you're coming from, what city and state, or if you're outside the United States, what country that you're coming to me from. Just go ahead and put that in the chat if you don't mind, so that I can say hello to you and know where you're coming from. But yeah, this weekly report and updates I give on my channel is talking about creating, really, it's the focus of it is creating a life that you love the most, and how to do that, and to do that, sex is a big deal. And we spend our lives oftentimes trying to minimize how big of a deal sex is. And we try to make it not a big deal, because that's what the culture all around us is telling us that we need to do. But it became really liberating to me when I finally realized just how big of a deal sex is, and how wonderful it can make life. I mean, today, the difference between living a life that was busy and I was always after it. And sure, I had great success in business and some financial success and educational success, and had, a good relationship with my wife. And so I had all those things, but, that doesn't mean that I've created a life that I love the most. sometimes we create a life that we're really busy and we're having a good time, but is it really the life that we love and love the most? And so what it came down to for me is to start to realize that there's something to liberation. And that's why we focus that in our association, Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, we focus then on helping people. Our central messages, we have, I guess, a couple of different messages that we put out, but obviously you've heard me say before, probably, unless you've not seen any of my other videos or you're not on our email list, in which you're not on my email list, then go ahead and click on the link below and get on that email list and subscribe. But one of the things that I talk about is that we want to have more sex with more people and more often. And that's the life that I want. And I want that for you as well. And I simply try to take and set an example of someone having more sex with more people and more often. Yes, even amongst COVID-19, there are ways to continue to enjoy that as well. And so we want to really help you, because I find that is the most liberating thing that I learned to really set my life free, is that I can have a very simple life and focus on simple things and enjoy the life that I create more than any other thing by focusing on having more sex with more people more often. But so often they're trying to stomp out all the fires and all the problems in our life, and that's how we end up creating a life, is by problem solving. And I did that for many years, and I found out that it's really much simpler than that. And problem solving is just not the thing we want to do. And I'll explain more about that as we go on here tonight. But first, let me go ahead and switch over my screen where I share my notes with you, and share the screen that I have here so that I can stay on track with the notes that I've prepared for the evening. And that way I don't get way off track, okay? And so I'm going to start at the top. This is our weekly wrap-up video report, and where we are helping you to transform your life, helping you transition and thrive in an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life that you create and love the most. And part of that then is having more sex with more people more often. And one of the things in doing that is we want to help you to create an ELF life. And ELF, this is kind of my creation, and ELF stands for easy, liberated, and fun. And I want to help you to create an ELF life, because much of my life, and I'm going to be reporting a little bit tonight with you on my past week, and something that came back to haunt me from my previous life. And I used to say that my life is hard, it's difficult, it's complicated. It was not an ELF life. And then Kat, one day, she says, "Well, but Mark, you are the most intentional person I know, and you talk about creating the life that you want, and you talk about how to use your energy to create the life you want, and yet then also because your energy is your words and your thoughts and your feelings, and your words and your thoughts and your feelings, Mark, are often on difficulties, hardships, working hard, and complications." Well, she says, "I really don't understand that, because I don't want any of that. I just want an easy life, a simple life." I said, "Well, yeah, that's what I want." She said, "But don't you realize that you teach that whatever you feed your energy to, you're going to get more of?" Oh my gosh, did the lights go off? I couldn't believe, because yes, I had been teaching in many areas of my life. I really have lived that. But on the other hand, what I was feeding my energy to was how hard and difficult. Yeah, I succeeded at things that I did, but it was hard. It was difficult. There were hardships along the way, and it oftentimes created complications. And then even in starting 13 years ago, starting to live my ethical and consensual non-monogamous life, I carried all that into this life with me, because it was really what I knew at that time. And I've learned so much since then that I hope to save you some hardships and help to save you some, having to work hard at things. And instead, I want you to have an else life where it can be easy, liberated, and fun. And this is the life that I create for myself today. But the thing is, though, and as I will explain here a little bit as well, is that the longer that you go in creating any other kind of life, then later in your life, it'll come back and it'll haunt you. And that's where I keep having to go back to things that part of that past life that I created, and it ends up being complications. It ends up being hard and difficult, and sometimes with some hardship. And sometimes I get just pulled right back into that. But by starting out now, wherever you're at in life, whether you're 20 years old or whether you're 60 years old, by starting out right now, then I'm going to help you to don't be a problem solver in your life. That's how I got the life that I had, but I really ended up not wanting. Instead, become a person that knows how to create the life that you love the most. And you want to create an elf life, easy, liberated, and fun. And I want to help you to get there. And every week I come here and usually have things to talk about along the lines of that, because these are things that I learn every week when I come and do this weekly wrap-up video report with you that's talking about things that I've learned from last week. And it's all applied to, for me, to my business world, because right now that's the transition that I'm working in, is to transition my income from an income that's trading dollars for hours or hours for dollars, and to creating an income that is more of a passive, ongoing income that's online, don't have to show up anywhere at any particular time, but it can be just continue to flow in on an online, so I can travel and go anywhere around the world and have that income continue to flow. And so in creating the easy, liberated, and fun life, then one of the little tests that I have learned is that you want to be increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in your magnetic life. Now, magnetic life is learning how to tap into the magnetic energy that we all have. It's so often, I mean, it took me over 50 years, well, 30 years as an adult, to learn how to start tapping into my magnetic energy. So often, these aren't things that we're taught, but we all have the magnetic energy. You maybe have heard about personal magnetism and what have you, but there's a whole package of things that are involved in magnetic energy. And it's really what it amounts to is that just think of your life. You can't see the energy that you're putting out, but that energy is going out there in these like radio waves, and it's sending these signals out to other people. And then it's drawing people into your life, into the circle of your life. Like you see this circle here, is drawing people into the circle of your life so that they're there in your life at the right time and the right place for you to make a connection that helps to keep your life moving forward and creating the life that you love the most, that you're constantly increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in your life. And then, like any magnet, a magnet will not only pull things to it, but it has the power to push things away. And so what you want to do is use your magnetic energy to push away the things in your life that you don't want. So in other words, you want to push away from you the things that do not increase the satisfaction and pleasure, and you want to pull into your life the things that do increase the satisfaction and pleasure you have in your life. And that when you start to learn how to tap into that magnetic energy, then that becomes the test for things every day, every hour. You can get involved in something and then just stop and say, wait a minute, is this increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in my life, or is it not? And if it is not, then you want to get out of there and get away from that as fast as you can. And then once you get away from there and get out of there, you sit back and realize, now, how did that happen? Then my magnetic energy must not be in sync somehow. And I can't go into this too much here. Our coaching process really, it's a 12-month coaching process that teaches a lot about this, where we're every week coaching you. It's a group coaching so that you're being in part of a group of people, and it's teaching you then how to know how to make sure that your magnetic energy is being tapped into. Because you see, one of the other things is that it can really get messed up in that you can pull to you the things that you don't want and be pushing away from you the things that you do want. And boy, I've had that experience throughout my life, and I want to help you to save yourself some time so that you can live as many years as you can possibly live that are constantly increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in your life. And you can enjoy having more sex with more people more often. And so going on to the next thing here is about liberating your life to create the magnetic life that you love the most. You know, and yeah, it takes liberating. That means sometimes that you have to release and let go of things. You know, when you think of liberating, how do you liberate your life? And so often, like I've learned in the last 10 years, and more than in the last, I guess, 2 years than all of the last 10 years combined, about oftentimes liberating your life is more about letting go, you know, being willing to let go. I mean, I get a chance to coach and chat and talk with people that, you know, they are not increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in their life because of the relationships that they have, but they just don't see any way out either. You know, either because there's kids involved, or, oh my gosh, because this is where I was. What would other people think if I got divorced? You know, this is your life. Who cares about what other people think? It's your life. And I can't emphasize that enough. If you go around with all these thoughts about what will everybody else think, you're never going to create a life that you will love the most, because you're creating what other people want your life to be, not what you want it to be. And you'll never create a life with more sex, with more people more often, because you're always concerned about all these other people. And so it means that we've got to liberate you from yourself most of the time. You know, liberate you from what other people think. And sometimes that liberation means that you're not afraid then to go to your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or whoever you're in a relationship with, and say to them, I want to have more sex with more people more often. Huh? Yeah. You know, it's nothing about you, but, you know, we've tried this monogamy thing, and I just need some more variety. And from what I have studied and learned, you can research this yourself, but what happens when you have more sex with more people more often, instead of it taking away from the sex that you have with your partner, you start to get a little more spark in your life. You start to get a little more spark in your sex life, and a little more spark in your emotional life, and you actually then have more desire with your partner instead of less desire. And so then, you know, go to your partner and say, yeah, I want to have more sex with more people more often. Now, can we just talk about this? And, you know, if your partner just blows up at you, there's no way, and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's certainly what my partner did. My wife did after I brought this up to her after 27 years of marriage. And, you know, and we talked about it and said, well, can we let some time pass and then revisit this? She said to me, no, we can never revisit this. Then I probably would have gone through with just realizing that we're going to get divorced. But she says, yeah, we can set this aside for just a little while and come back and revisit this. And so we did that. And then when we came back to revisit it, we were able to start moving forward. You know, why can't we talk with our partners about our desires for having more sex with more people more often. Why not? And so the test then that I have here is, again, I mentioned this a moment ago, but to just be asking yourself, is this increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in your life? And go through your everyday and hour by hour, and then start to keep track, because yes, not everything that we are doing at that moment is increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in your life in that moment. Is it going to take you down a road, down a path to help you to increase the satisfaction and pleasure in your life? For instance, then when I went to my wife and talked to her about having more sex with more people more often, that yeah, it was not increasing my satisfaction and pleasure at that time. It was creating some challenges and difficulties for me at that time just to be able to have that conversation with her. But then that was the path that I needed to go on, because I wasn't going to be dishonest and lie and cheat and sneak around on my wife. I know that a lot of people do that, and even a lot of people in my audience do that. They get in touch with me every once in a while, and they tell me that it's not what they want, but they just don't know how else to do it any other way. Well, there are choices and there are options for you. And maybe my coaching is something that you need some help with in order to really see those choices and those options. And that's why it's a 12-month coaching program, because it's not something that, I mean, I'm not going to tell you what you have to do or kind of show you the way or anything like that, because you actually, in reality, you already have all the answers that you need. But so often that they are being washed down deep inside of you, those answers that are already there. And all I do is I work through a process every week for 12 months. I work through processes with you that help you to kind of just let go of some things so that you end up creating an ELF life that's easy, liberated, and fun. Because it doesn't matter all the material trappings that we have and how many barbecues that we go to with family and friends and oh yeah, we're a happy couple and all this kind of stuff. If your life is not easy, liberated, and fun, like I looked good for many years. I was successful in business and I was good in my community, not only creating jobs, but providing volunteers in my community and providing financial support for charities and things of this nature in my community. But you see, because I didn't have an easy, liberated, and fun life, the things that I was doing on a day-to-day basis and then week to week and then month to month, it was not a path that was increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in my magnetic life. And I didn't even know about anything about liberating my life in order to create the magnetic life that I love the most. But this is your opportunity. This is your chance to listen to me here and to realize that, yeah, this is making sense to me. And then come back every week after week. You can get involved in our coaching program, 12-month coaching program if you want. But another thing is that just keep coming back week after week, or come back when you can. And because you'll keep hearing a lot of the same message again and again. And so here we are today on September 7th, 2020. And I want to start out by saying happy birthday, Grandma. I love my grandma. She's no longer with us. She hasn't been with us for 20 years. She died in 2000, December 24th, 2000, Christmas Eve. And I love my grandma. She was closer to me than my mom. My mom had died 20 years earlier than that. And in fact, I'll just I disagree with the laws that we have about sex between people that are related, and to be honest, I'm just thinking, it would have been just a beautiful thing to be able to have had sex with my grandma, to be honest with you. And I won't go any further than that, but I'll just start out by saying happy birthday, Grandma, and move on. Now, last week video, I talked about celebrations and how you handle celebrations and holidays and special events in your life and when you're having a non-monogamous life. And one of the things I forgot to say last week is the reason that topic was key for me last week is because last week it was my 63rd birthday on Tuesday. Of course, made the video on Monday evening like I do every Monday evening here between 8 and 8:30, make these videos and talk to my audience. But last week then was my 63rd birthday on Tuesday. And, with my birthday, it used to be, like, okay, I've got to take and make sure that I split my time. If I with this person this year, I'm with this person next year. And I created this complicated life for myself in my non-monogamous life. I didn't know about liberating myself at that point. And I talked about that last week and how to start to liberate myself so that I wasn't creating a complicated life anymore. And so that's really what brought that topic about last week, because it was my birthday on Tuesday. And so the structure that we have here is I mentioned before, it's reframing and then transitioning, or actually, excuse me, transforming, not transitioning, but transforming, reframing, transforming, and then liberating. It's a three-step process that we help you to go through. And sometimes the things that I talk about will fit into the reframing. Other times they'll fit into the transitioning. Other times it'll fit in, or even not transitioning, but transforming. There's a big difference between transforming and transitioning. The transition is what we're doing, and the transitioning is the flow, the movement, but transformation has to take place in the process. So there's reframing, there's transformation, and then there's also liberation finally comes to you. And one of the things, though, is that we are taught to solve problems. And that's how I lived my life for many years. And even now with, what I'm going through with my income, there are things that come up every week, and like even last week, the things that I was going through, I'll tell you more about it in a moment. We get to the weekly report part, and there's things that come up, and I can switch back to my old mode of problem solving. But you see, I want to tell you the problem with problem solving. I'm going to come back to this. Remember, I mentioned to you a few moments ago in this video that what you focus your energy on. Now, your energy is your words, your thoughts, and your feelings. And what you focus your energy on is what you'll get more of, even if it's not what you want. And so, like I said, for a long time, that I focused my energy. And when you focus your energy on problems, or what we call a problem-solving structure, what do you think you're going to get more of? Yeah, you're going to get more problems. And the problems just never seem to go away. Well, on the other hand, if you start to focus your energy on what you want instead of what you don't want, then you start to get into what we call a creative energy structure. And that creative energy structure is, again, just saying, is that your mind, your thoughts, and your words and your feelings are on what you want. So like in the morning, I start out doing a little bit of meditation every day. And in that meditation, one of the things I do is spend just a few moments getting into the feeling I want for the day. And how I do that, there's a number of different ways, and these are processes that we teach in our coaching, and there's numerous things, but there's numerous processes, numerous ways that we help you to get into this energy of what you want. And so, like this morning, thinking then about the energy that I want to create in my life, oftentimes, that old pattern is that of complication and problem solving and hard life and things just being hard and difficult, not being easy and liberating and fun. And so oftentimes I get into that old mode if I'm not careful. That's why in the morning I really try to get myself into the energy, and that is with my words and my thoughts, and then the most important is how I'm actually feeling. My feeling is what is that I want to create. And so right now, then, what I want to create is I want to create a life of achievement. And so in creating a life of achievement this morning, then I start out my meditation thinking that, okay, how does it feel? What does that feel like to be there? Say, go down the road 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, and looking back, and I've achieved just so much in my life. I've not only achieved so much in my life, but I've achieved, what I've wanted in the last 5 years. For me, it's going to having that income all online. In fact, right now I'm really focused on the next 2 years, and so that when I turn 65, and that by the time we'll be past this whole COVID-19 thing, and how do I want to feel? I want to feel that this 2 years I achieved a lot in my life. Instead of, okay, boy, I'm sure glad, because there's a lot of people that are just sitting on their hands and waiting for this COVID-19 to be over. And I want to be 2 years down the road, because that's how long it's going to take for this COVID-19 thing to be over. And I've been saying that for 6 months. And I'm still saying that. And now I'm thinking, okay, it's still going to be 2 more years. So it's going to be 2.5 years in total. And I'm not just sitting on my hands. And then 2 years from now, I want to be able to look back. I want to be able to look at what I have achieved and be feeling so good about what I achieved in this 2 years. And so I start out my day thinking about how I want to feel 2 years from now. And I actually plant the seeds to that feeling inside of me today, because that's part of our energy then. I want to feel today like an achiever that I want to be 2 years from now. And so I start out my day then with my words and my thoughts and my feelings, and taking them where I'm going to be in 2 years from now, and then beyond that, 5 years from now. And what are my words then? What are my thoughts then? What are my feelings then? And I bring those back to my current day's reality. You see, because we create our reality, and I'm creating every day the reality of my future. And the reality of my future is where I am having more sex with more people more often. It's where I'm having just constantly increasing more satisfaction and pleasure in my life. And so that's then the elf life, easy, liberating, and fun. And so this is what we want to really help you with. And the thing with the problem structure that I used to follow myself, that, yeah, you get it done, it's like you've got these fires constantly around you. And my mentor, Chris Duncan, has taught me a lot. And before Chris Duncan, I listened a lot to another mentor I had. That mentor would say, well, when you're thinking of problem solving model, then think about and where you place your energy. Over the last 30 years, how much energy have we as a country placed on the war on drugs? Have we solved it? How about the war on cancer? Have we solved that? How about the war? I remember when President Kennedy came out with his speech, the war on poverty. He declared war on poverty. Do we have more poverty in America today or less? Do we have more drugs today in America or less drugs in America and drug-related problems than what we had 30 years ago or 20 years ago when the war was declared? Same thing, we hear these people, we got a war on crime. You see, what you put your energy to, your words, your thoughts, and your feelings, then even if it's what you don't want, you're going to create more of that, not less of it. You may solve some problems, but only to create more problems. And this is what my wife and I had done for 25 years in our marriage. We constantly were struggling and putting our energy on trying to solve our sex problem because we weren't enjoying sex with each other. And we were constantly then trying to solve that problem. But nobody ever, with all the therapists that we went to and all the counselors we went to and all the medical people we went to and all the books we read and all the videos we watched, and like I've said before, I spent over $50,000 in 25 years trying to solve this problem. Nobody had ever sat down and said, what does it look like that you want to create? And funny enough, it just flashed in my head now that, I said that my wife and I had first went to her and said, well, I want to have more sex with more people more often. And she had all this resistance that went up, but then she says, well, let's go ahead and put it on shelf for a little while. And then can we come back and revisit it? And she says, yes, we can do that. And so then we came back and revisited it. And after then the resistance started to slowly come down. When we came back to revisit it, then the resistance flew back right back up. And I just simply explained, well, I think that we could create a better life if we didn't have so much resistance to the idea of having more sex with more people more often. I think we could create a better life. Wouldn't you like to create a better life? And she said, well, yeah, I want to create a better life. Okay, well, we've been struggling. It's like we're trying to put out fires for 25 years, struggling with this thing. At that point, it was 26 years. And so she started to really think about what I was saying. And I'll never forget the day. She'd come back, she'd been out for the day. And during that day, she talked to a friend of ours, a single woman that we had developed a friendship with, not a sexual friendship with, but a friendship with this single woman who she was actually here in Seattle going to seminary. She was in her 30s. She was going to seminary, because she was a Christian and was going to be a minister. And her name was Ashley. And my wife had called Ashley during the day that day. And Ashley just said to my wife, well, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? And what are you going to lose if you continue to create all this resistance? And, it's like, yeah, it made sense. What do you have to lose? And what are you going to lose? My wife realized that she's going to probably lose everything, lose our marriage, lose the life that we had together. And what if she had to lose by maybe opening up, letting go of her resistance and saying, well, opening up to possibilities and saying, okay, well, he wants to have more sex with more people more often. What would I have to lose? Well, I don't want to get an STI. That became, part of the things that we started to talk about then is how we protect ourselves so that we don't have STIs. And so she came one day and she says, at that day, she talked to Ashley. She'd been out. She talked to Ashley on the phone. And she says, hey, Mark, so tell me how this looks in your mind. If we were to have more sex with more people more often, what does that look like? Now, I wasn't prepared for that question from her at all. And I wasn't prepared because I says, well, I hadn't thought about that. I don't know. I don't know what it looks like. But her asking that question that day, then that shifted our whole energy of what we were doing. We were no longer putting our focus on the problems that we had, the problems of trying to have more sex with more people more often, the problems of talking about this, and the problems that all created. Instead, we shifted our whole energy to the structure, which we call the creative energy structure. And that is, yeah, what does this look like? What do we want to create with this? And when she asked that question, then we started to look for that answer to that question, because I just said to her, I don't know. I hadn't ever thought about that before. And I really honestly just don't know. I don't know what this looks like. Said, well, let's talk about what this might look like. And so we then started to talk about what it might look like for, starting out me at least, having more sex with more people more often, and what it looked like for her. And so when we started to talk about that, that is when we started to make progress. Until then, it was just full of roadblocks and resistance, because we were following the problem-solving model, the problem-solving structure, which is what we had done our whole life. But when we took and started to focus on talking about what do we want to create, what do we want this to look like, and that's why, going back here, that we want to take and help you to go into these 4 things. We want to help you to create an easy, liberated, fun life, an ELF life. We want to help you to have a life where you're increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in your magnetic life. And we have magnetic life because we want you to tap into the magnetic energy in your life. We want to help you to liberate your life to create the magnetic life that you love the most. And then remembering this test, is this increasing the satisfaction and pleasure in your life? If it's not, if it's not putting you on a path that's going to help you to increase the satisfaction and pleasure in your life, then chances are you're just back to problem solving and you're not in the creative mode. And so you want to get into the creative motive, the creative energy structure. And when you do that, then you find that you start to make progress. And that's when I started realizing that I'm a progressive in my life, because I'm creating my life and I'm progressing in what I want to create. And so I'm always looking at having more satisfaction and pleasure in my magnetic life. And so the other thing I have down here is then we'll talk a little bit about routines versus targets, because as we go on to talk about my last week's report, then just want to realize that one of the things that I made a shift on is that I realized that we do need some routines in our life, but you don't want to create so many routines in your life that you just get bogged down. And that's where I found that I was at. I've created so many routines that I literally got bogged down. I got lost in. I got stuck in the routines in my life. There was no freedom and liberation to increase my having more satisfaction and more pleasure, because I was so stuck in the routines. And this happens to me regularly, and I've got to keep my focus now on my targets versus routines. Yes, I need routines in my life, but I want to minimize the routines so I can keep moving forward to the targets, because the routines will keep us in a pattern, like the hamster wheel, just going round and round and round we go again. And so something that I've added down here then to my weekly report we'll talk about here in a moment is something as an area about routines. But let's get on with the weekly report so we can kind of get this wrapping up. And so my overriding desire is to create an ongoing online passive income of $5,000 per month from the 5 e-commerce stores that I'm building. And so then the next overriding desire is to create an online non-monogamous lifestyles academy with 1,000 free members and 200 paid members. And then another one, and this is a new one that I'm just really excited about, and that is to create an ethical, consensual, non-monogamous financial liberation joint venture club with 1,000 free members and 200 paid members. You see, because I want to help 1,000 people to liberate themselves financially. Now, I've got a guy that here in the last week, 2 weeks, been talking to me about what I'm doing, some of the things that I'm creating here, and he doesn't. He agrees totally with a ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. He says we were not made to be monogamous. It's just that here I am, 55 years old, and I've lived my whole life monogamous, and it's the only thing I know. So I don't know that I'm going to be switching, even though I'm single right now. I don't know that I'm going to be switching to living a non-monogamous life because the only thing I've ever known is monogamy. You know, and he keeps coming back and asking me more questions, and so who knows where that's going. But so then, he's talking to me about this whole financial liberation joint venture club, and I told him, I said, well, you have to be having been lived an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life for at least a few years, ongoing, and before basically I'll work with you. But I want to take and help 1,000 people to be able to create joint ventures. Now, those joint ventures are joint ventures with me. And those joint ventures with me is where we create a business, like for instance, with these 5 e-commerce stores that I'm doing. Well, that's the start of it. And then, so imagine though, that you come on board and you and I create a joint venture where you own 55% of this joint venture. So that means you got all the controlling interest. I own 20% because if I'm going to help you, I want to make sure I got some reward coming from it, some skin in it, but you want to make sure I have some skin in the game as well. Now, then I hire an assistant, and my assistants are all in people that I hire that are in the Philippines. And so they are actually doing most of the work so that it only takes the person that owns 55%, and I'll just say this, that would be you, it only takes you 1 to 5 hours a week to be able to help to create this, because you got to make decisions, you got to look things over and stuff like this. But really all the work is being done by the person that we also work with in the Philippines. And that person, we start out, I pay them a salary, and then they have a 15% stake in this joint venture. So they get 15% of the profits. And as the profits then grow, then with a 15% stake, that'll come off their salary. And so eventually then they won't be making any salary, but they'll be living off the profits of the store that they create. And they're going to be creating 5 stores at one time, because they're going to be working with your store plus 4 other people's store, because I'm going to do this joint venture with 5 people. And I actually hope to be doing this joint venture with 500 people. So we have 100 people in the Philippines hired that are doing this working, they're doing the work and so forth. They're each doing the work for 5 people. And so the first year, then they'll create a store for you and get that store to be making over $1,000 a month. And then once they have done that, because when they start out with us, they don't know how to do this. I provide them with all the training and help and supervision and consultation and everything that they need to be able to create this online income that's really passive. It means it's ongoing. Once it gets set up, it just keeps going like clockwork. And the people in the Philippines, they keep it tuned up. They do all the work. And of course, their 15% ownership means that they'll keep doing the work to keep this thing running smoothly. So they're doing this for you and 4 other people, so 5 people. And that's why I'm starting out with creating 5 e-commerce sites, just like as if there were 5 people they were doing this for. And I'm going to take and show you what the results are with them doing this, and with one person creating those 5 sites, because then you'll be one of the 5 people that they're creating a site for. And after they create the site the first time, because they're just learning as they go, but then they know how to do it. And so it may take them a year to create that first site, to get it to $1,000 a month of profit. And then it'll go from 1,000 to 2,000 as it continues to grow, but it'll take less and less of their time. So what do they do with this extra time they got? Well, they're going to then create a second site for you, and you and the other 4 people. So then now there's 10 sites that are built. But the only thing is, they can now, because they know what they're doing, they can build this site in 3 months instead of 12 months. And so 3 months later, they then are still continuing to work on building the sales and doing everything they need to do to keep these other sites growing. But then they go ahead and they create a third site for you, and also for 4 other people. So now they've created 15 sites. And then we continue that process until they have created 5 sites for you. Yes, it'll take anywhere from 2 to 5 years, 2 to 3 years to create those 5 sites and get each one of those sites where it's just making $1,000 or more in profit. You know, can you imagine 55%? And your average site, say, is making $2,000 a month in profit. Now you only get 55%. So we'll just round that down and say $1,000 a month. You're going to be making $5,000 a month in profit off of those 5 sites. And so this is kind of joint venture that I want to create so that I can help ethically and consensually non-monogamous people who are enjoying their liberated, sexually liberated life. And I want to help them to have financial liberation to go with that. Now, in reality, of course, I'm going to be following all the results as I go along here and recording it all, so there'll be a case study. And in reality, that yeah, I think that in a period of 3 or 4 years, that we'll be able to create incomes from these sites of $10,000 a month or more. That's a passive ongoing income for your 55%. And that means then the person in the Philippines is making their 15%, and I'm making my 20%. You're making 55% of the profit. And one other place then is that we also are going to create with this joint venture, 10% of it is owned by Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. That's our nonprofit association that help more people to create an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. That's our nonprofit organization. And I want to be able to take and have that organization own 10% of every one of these joint ventures. And yeah, when I create then help 1,000 people to create financial liberation, then it's going to be 1,000 people where maybe let's say they've got 5 sites, and it's 5,000 sites that then is 10% of those sites are owned by Non-Monogamous Lifestyle Associations. And so that will then provide an ongoing funding basis for this nonprofit Non-Monogamous Lifestyle Association. And so that's just kind of how everything's evolving here. And it all started because of what I'm going through. In every week I've been reporting to you, this is week 11, I think, about creating a passive online income of $5,000 a month. And so it's very exciting times here, things that we're doing. And so the past week's focus, here we go. We're just going to really quickly get through some of this. Either pass or fail. Did I complete the sale of my bus? Fail. But see, this is where I don't want you to find yourself down the road somewhere and that you've created a life of complications, a life that's hard and can have hardships, and a life where it's just difficult sometimes. You know, I have a buyer for my bus ready to pay me in full. And he showed up this past week on Wednesday, pay me in full. And we went to have the title transferred, and I have this folder and been carrying it around for months with me, carried to California and then back. And I wanted to make sure I had all the information with me at all time, wherever I was. And I said, wanting to get this bus sold. And then I opened that folder up, and it's the registration, not the title. I thought it was the title in that folder. So I'm going to come back here to my desk where I have files and things here in Seattle at Chris's apartment. And I come back here and I start looking through, you know, and I right away find a file that says bus on it. And so I open that file, and I'm usually generally I try to stay pretty organized with stuff, and open that file up, and there wasn't a title in there. There was one of the sheets of several in there was a sheet about getting the title transferred from the original owner to me. And so then I thought, well, well, I'll just go down to the licensing place and I'll get a lost title thing. So I went there, and the line was an hour long to wait through to get inside, and so I finally got inside and find out that yeah, it's complicated because years, it turns out, my past difficulty in life and not always having the time to complete everything as much as I needed to, and not having people in my life, a team that really supported me and got things done properly for me, that I would turn things over to them, and they would not always get things done, and that's why then I would end up having to do it myself, and it was a difficult life, and like I said, I didn't create a life with good teams, didn't have good teammates, like my wife was my best teammate, but she created more complication and problems for me, again, by less satisfaction and less pleasure than she did in giving me more satisfaction and more pleasure. And it was just how I created my life at the time, and I learned from it all. And I hope that you're learning from me as well. And so I went ahead and realized then that title never got changed. I bought the bus in 2000, and the guy was old then, so I figured the guy's dead. And I knew the guy lived somewhere in Coos Bay, Oregon, had his house, but the title was in Yuma, Arizona, because that's where he went and lived in the bus 6 months of the year in Yuma, Arizona. And so it was an address of this place where he went down to Yuma, Arizona every year, and it was an RV park. And it's like, oh man, how am I going to get a hold of the guy? I did find a slip that I kept around with his cell phone number and his email addresses. His cell phone number is no good. And email address, I had 2 email addresses on it that were no good. And it's like, oh man. And what I was told is I'd probably have to go to court, and possibly even go to court in Arizona and also in Washington, to be able to try to figure out a way to get the title, his name off the title. But then another possibility was that they died, and it was a couple, both their names were on the title. And the possibility was that they died, and then their heirs could come back and say, oh, no, we don't know anything about this, and so we own that bus. We must, it must be, if it was our dad's, then we own it, and it could create just all kinds of a mess. Well, and so I went through every piece of old paperwork that I had, and there were records that he kept, and a big fat stack of receipts and stuff, and I went through and found several phone numbers on those receipts, and so I started calling those phone numbers, and finally one of those phone numbers last week, one night, I got an answer. It says, hello? I says, I'm looking for Bud. Is this Bud? No, this is his son, though. I said, oh, huh. Is Bud still alive? Well, yeah. His mom's dead, but Dad's alive. I said, oh, man, was that a relief? And so I said, well, I explained who I was and what I was doing. He says, I'll give you your phone. I'll give Dad's phone. I'll give Dad your phone number. 30 minutes later, Bud, his nickname is Fred's his first name. He was calling me on the phone, and so the next day I went to the licensing office and said, "What do I need?" And they said, "We just need these forms notarized, and need a copy of the death certificate to get her off the title, and these forms signed and notarized, and you're all taken care of, man." What a relief that was, But here again, that's just part of this life that I had created, with difficulties, time after time, and sometimes these difficulties created hardships. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to get wrapped up in the same thing. But I kept my focus on that day and those 2 days that I was working on this. I didn't want to say I was trying to solve this problem, because I kept my focus on what do I want to create here, and so it all worked out. And so that really ended up taking up my week. So now he should get the paperwork in the mail tomorrow. And by the time he goes off to a notary and get them signed and returned to me, it'll probably be about 2 weeks before I am working back on completing the sale of my bus. So did I get it done last week? No, I did not complete the sale of my bus. Second thing, sort and clear through 7 months of stuff on my desk in Seattle. Well, you can have a look there yourself, and you'll see that it's just as messy now as maybe even a few more things I put on it. And so no, I can't say I give myself a pass on that. And but that'll stay on my list, but not for this week because I got too much going on. Complete the website for digital marketing arsenal, and didn't even come close to getting anything done on that. And so I wanted to show you the structure because I'm running overtime tonight. And so I'm showing the structure again, and I want to help you to utilize the same structure. And so like then you start out for yourself. What are the 3 things that I want to accomplish this week? And this structure is a structure that I've developed now with the help of my mentor and also my coach. My mentor is in Australia, my coach is in Germany. And so I want to help you to be able to apply the same structure to what you're creating, the life that you're creating. And then I list out my routines, and here again, then I can see is, do I just have too many routines in my life? Do I need to try to figure out how to get rid of some of these routines? And at first I thought, yes. And so I started working on getting rid of some routines so I wasn't stuck in those routines. And then I have my objectives for my financial and business life, and so my objectives there listed out. And then the objectives that I have for my sex and relationships. And then the objectives I have for my health and fitness and wellness. And then my fulfillment. What is going to help me to really feel fulfilled in life? And so that's then where I list some things here. And so all of that then is part of the structure. And then the last part of it is just having a list of things that are on hold right now. And so that's then the structure that I use. And then we come down to the next part of the report. What are the accomplishments? And I didn't get to this, filling all this in before going live here. But the accomplishments, for last week, it was really just getting where that title was all resolved, and creating what I want with that. And it's just delayed, but I mean, delaying 2 weeks is a whole lot better than delaying many months by having to go to court, possibly in Arizona and Washington. And so, I mean, that's a whole lot better. Trying to run down, the errors of an estate, and oh my gosh. And so then bottlenecks, breakdowns, and breakthroughs, and mostly it's the breakthroughs that I'm reporting here about. For instance, one breakthrough for last week was this whole idea of creating this elf life that's easy, liberated, and fun. And I want to model that for you and have you really realize that that's really what you want, and because you want an elf life that gives you more satisfaction and more pleasure. And so then the 3 things that I'm accomplishing this week, oh my gosh, I didn't get this all filled in properly. I'm sorry. And so we'll run out of time, but yeah, I've got listed. I'll review them next week, but I have another document that I end up really turning into my coach every week that has my commitments for next week. I send it to my coach then on Sunday night, and it lists my commitments for next week, what I'm committing to do. And that's where my 3 objectives for the week comes from, and that's where I'm going to either give myself a pass or a fail. And when I give myself a fail, then that just means that I reevaluate and move on next week. What is it then this week that I'm going to really commit to focus on doing? And so I got those listed, but apparently didn't get those transferred over into the document tonight. Sorry about that. But so anyway, you get an idea of the structure. And just coming back here to finishing up with the whole concept here of transforming your life, helping you to transition and thrive so that you can have an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life that you create and that you love the most. And that means that you're having more sex with more people more often. And you're creating a life that is easy, liberating, and fun. And you're having more satisfaction and pleasure instead of less satisfaction and pleasure. And it's all a result of liberating your life and tapping into the magnetic energy in your life. If you need help with any of that, look down below in the description, and my email address is down there, and drop me an email, and we can start to chat and see what kinds of possibilities that we have for you. And so thank you for being here tonight with me. And if you have any questions or comments, then go ahead and respond to any questions or comments you'd have. Put them in the comments below, and I'll be happy to respond to them as well. Or again, my email address is there in the description. Feel free to send me an email. Thanks a lot. Have a great week, and make it an ELF week. Easy, liberating, and fun. Thanks a lot now.